Greetings and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about my most important purchase as an early retiree, and as such it may not interest some of you, but if you're leaving now, thanks for stopping by. And my next video will most likely be on an early look at the cost of living adjustment for next year. But getting back to the subject at hand, originally I was going to say that the most important thing that I ever purchased was time. But as I wrote this, I discovered that it was more about something else. I would see that people around me were purchasing things like cars, vacations, whatever it might be, a new computer, whatever they might be purchasing. And I felt a little weird about it. Like, well, I bought time, and that's not really, I mean, it is partly what I did. But what I have figured out is I basically pre-purchased all these things that other people are buying. I just paid for them either years ago or whatever by saving the money to buy them in the future. So the vacation I'm taking to London next year, well, most likely next year, I don't know, we'll find out. But I already paid for that. I paid for the gallon of milk that I'm going to drink in 2033 and, in like May or June or whatever. I've already purchased my next car that I'm estimating I'll need in about, 6 to 10 years, somewhere in that time frame. But I've already got the money set aside for that. So it's not like I'm not buying these things. I'm just not buying them yet. Maybe you're wondering about unexpected expenses. What happens if there's an emergency or something comes up that I didn't actually have planned? Well, a lot of that is planned into the budget, or I have insurance. I have a term life policy to cover if I were to pass early and my family would need the extra money for for a certain period of time until there would be no need for it anymore. Medical, obviously, I have insurance for that. Anything that's major, anything that could be catastrophic, I have insurance for. Everything else, all the minor stuff, vacations, future, like I mentioned before about my car purchase in the future, all these things I have budgeted for. And yes, something could go wrong. There's always that possibility. Maybe I do have to go back to work for some period of time. I'm open to that. It's not like, oh, it will never happen, I can't do it. And I mean, it might be hard to find a high paying job since I'll be out of the market for so long, my skills obsolete or whatever. I can find something that'll help me get by. And an example of this that we had recently, past winter, a friend had invited us to go along on a 9-night cruise to the Caribbean. And I think my wife thought for sure I would say, no, it's not in the budget. We can't do that because this was like a surprise expense. We weren't planning on doing. But it was well within our vacation budget. And so, maybe we didn't do something else this spring. Not that we had anything planned, but we went on the cruise and, it's within the budget. So it doesn't impact, how much money we have, or it doesn't impact things in the future. It doesn't it fit. So that's how I would answer that question about unexpected expenses. The next question becomes, why does it matter? Why would I decide to make these decisions and save money for the future and plan ahead like this so I could retire early? Why would you retire early and no longer be a contributing member of society? Although I'll get into that later, where volunteer stuff like that are something that I definitely will be able to do. But over these past 2 years, I haven't regretted it at all. I've been retired for over 2 years now. And one of the things I really have to remind myself, or I don't even really have to remind myself, but something that I remember and is important, is that there were days at work where I'd look out the window, it was a beautiful day, and I couldn't just get up and go for a run or a hike or even just a walk. I tried to fit those things into my work day when I could at lunch and stuff like that. And, I do miss my coworkers. I loved working there. Things that I didn't miss, though, is the fact that over 50 hours of my week was spoken for between the commute Definitely don't miss the commute at all. Hated the commuting. The time I spent at work just because I had to be there at a certain time. So that time was not mine. I didn't not necessarily not enjoy that time, but I like to have more control over my time. And then even the mandatory, lunch break that basically spoken for him. Do things on my own during that. It wasn't the same. It's like, okay, this is my mandatory lunchtime. So it's scheduled. All these things were scheduled. And I hated not having control over that. So that's why it mattered to me. I wanted to have control of my time, to be able to do what I wanted when I wanted. And fortunately, my expenses and my lifestyle is not extravagant, and I'm not going to have a problem on a fairly small budget. So small budget is something that's helped a lot. And the budget leads me into this next question on how did I figure out how much I was going to need? And again, that comes down to establishing a budget and projecting out these future expenses, because most of them are unknown. There are things that are fairly steady. I know how much certain bills are going to cost. They're going to go up over time with inflation, cell phone bills and internet bill, but one of the things that's going to offset some of that is downsizing my home. So heating and cooling costs should come down. Also downsizing the home gives me other money to add into my budget for future expenses again, since that's the whole plan, is I'm pre-purchasing things in the future. And worst case scenario, because I do have a pension, as long as my budget, my mandatory expenses or my non-discretionary expenses fall within my pension, then I can always just fall back and cut things like vacations and eating out and these discretionary expenses that I don't need to have anymore. Another note about pensions, and especially military pensions, is I do know people that think their military pension is basically nothing and not enough. And to them, it probably isn't. And I would agree that if you still have a house payment and you still have car payments and other debt payments, that a pension on its own is not nearly enough. But in my case, I eliminated those expenses. So there is no mortgage anymore. There is no car payment. I've saved money. I've got money set aside so I don't have car payments in the future. So the pension is a decent amount of money for me. I understand that it's not necessarily much for other people, but for me, it's been great, and it's been plenty of money to live off of if I have to. The next question I want to address is how this can help you. I know I don't have that many viewers, but maybe this video will pick up and people will actually learn something from it. But over the years, a lot of my reading has, I initially thought education was very important for finance, and that would help people save for the future when they saw that, hey, my money can compound. And if you look at like the Money Guy show, they have their 88 times over. For someone who's 20, by the time they hit 65, $1 would be worth $88 in that time period. And that's based on their projections for, how the stock market will, perform on average. And basically they said that, $1 when you're 20 equates to $88 if you invest it when you're 65. And I would think that that kind of education would be enough for people to be encouraged, or would motivate them to just go ahead and save. But what I found is that most of the research indicates that what causes people to save, there are a couple things. A big downturn in the market will cause people to save more, just because they're trying to replenish. But those are the people that save. So obviously that lifts the average of saving, the savings rate. The other thing is that making the enrollment in retirement plans automatic. Now, I don't normally agree with a lot of the stuff the government does when it comes to money and finances. But in the Secure 2.0 Act that was approved this past December, they're actually requiring automatic enrollment beginning in 2025 for employers with new employers with new 401k and 403b plans. So the employees will be automatically enrolled, and they have the option to disenroll, or basically you're creating a little bit of a barrier for them to get out of it. They can easily get out of it. It's an easy process to disenroll from a program like that. But what studies have found is people are, I don't want to say lazy, but it's sort of that they're lazy, and that they're willing to leave that money in there and allow like a company match to happen, where this is more money than they would save normally. And they're doing it automatically. And the only thing that they'd have to make a concerted effort to go in and stop it. So this plan does work, and it should help some people, maybe a lot of people, have more money for their retirement, and have a little more cushion for when things might go wrong as they age. Hopefully, I know Social Security is looking at deficits. They're probably going to be increasing ages. They're probably going to be making some more changes to Social Security, where these extra savings are going to probably be necessary for some people. And hopefully what will happen is this will go into effect. It will increase the number of people saving for retirement in their 401k and 403b plans, and that'll secure their future a little better. Again, I like to think that just educating people is enough, but from what I've read and what I've learned, the best way is to make it automatic, and you don't give them the option to enroll, but you give them the option to unenroll. To summarize, while I was working, I decided to set aside money for future me. And now that I am future me, I'm very happy that I did. This has given me a lot of time. I've had some family medical issues that this has given me a lot of time to be able to help with. I would have had to take a lot of time off from work to help take care of these things if I was still at work. And it's actually given me a lot more freedom to be able to help family members and do things that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise, or would have been much more difficult. I felt like I might lose appreciation for what I have now, but I constantly remind myself of what I wouldn't be doing if I were still working. It's not for everybody. Work is a sense of identity for a lot of people, and that's great. For me, it was not. Having my time and having control over my time and being able to do things that I want to do was very important to me. So I could help my family out. I really want to get more into volunteering, because I do see that I am getting a little bored of certain things. And volunteering is a way. I'd probably do volunteer income tax next year. And I really want to do more work with Habitat for Humanity. I did a little bit of while I was in the Navy, and I'm excited to get more involved in that after my move, and which is happening. So over the next 2 or 3 weeks, I probably won't have any videos coming out. I may do some recording of the move just so I have some things to show as like a summary after the move, but we'll see how that goes. Please leave a like, consider subscribing, and remember, the next time I will probably be covering either my move or a early look at the cost of living adjustment for next year. Looking at maybe 2 to 4%. Could be higher, but we'll take a deep, in-depth look and see what we might have for next year. And remember, if you're going to retire, retire to something.